guys, I'm Jen. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be about my process on how I've worked through my trauma. And Tucker in the background is joining us. Peanut is down here waiting to get up here, but unfortunately she is a snorer, so I'm encouraging her just to hang out with her bone. Okay, so because I've had a number of betrayal experiences, it's allowed me to kind of slow it down and see what I do in order to recover for it. So that's kind of what I'm aiming at here for this video. I'm going to try to format it the best way I know how, but you may want a pen and paper to take notes, because if you've been following me up to this point, you understand that I'm still not quite organized in expressing my thoughts. So with me, whenever it starts with the betrayal, that's something that I've ignored the red flags. It's usually someone I've moved towards out of guilt or feeling like I could recognize wounding within them, so I thought we were similar in some way. And it also is someone who is in proximity to me in my environment. This is someone like in workplaces where, you know, it was meant to be a season, not a lifetime. This is, you know, even just because you meet people within your, like, they can be neighbors, they can be in your community. These are social services where you're having to go there to get support, and you come up with a caseworker who is meant to be supporting you, but you end up having to do their work, and they make your life harder, things like that. And part of the thing is has actually been helpful for me is to understand, like, this can happen in not just vulnerable sectors where we have to be really aware of these predatory type people that are looking for supply. And the supply is they're looking to make you feel worse so they can feel better. That's how they grow themselves. They don't improve their life. They don't become better. They like to step on other people. They like to use their position of power. And it doesn't have to be like, you know, a politician, you know, someone who's super popular. They just have to have some numbers, some sort of status. People have to see them as helpful. And so it's really, they create this sort of facade where if you were to call them out on their behavior, it's going to be challenging for other people to be like, that they did that. And so that's why it's so challenging to work your way through this. So and every time I just remember thinking I'd given someone the benefit of a doubt. I had been still overly trusting, and without, so this all these betrayals that I've experienced have actually helped me to look at people differently. Instead of assume everybody's safe, I have to look at everybody like you have the potential to hurt me. And some people may not like that idea, so if that's not for you, I don't know what to tell you. To me, I was raised to blindly trust everybody and be blindly loyal to everybody, and that has not worked well for me. And I also had, you know, I spoke to a therapist about this, and she suggested I had to learn to start trusting people, and that's when I had to walk away from her, because I found that an odd request as a therapist. If you understood how the abuse happens in the gray zone, it's because I was overly trusting. And so that's when I stopped listening to some therapists, because I just thought, I understand at some point to reintegrate myself back into society, there's a level of openness, but to trust, I think that's different. I have no problem being open with my life here. I have, you know, I offer what I can that I feel it's going to be helpful to people, but at the same time, I can be vulnerable, and I can still understand that you're not safe. So I think there's a difference there. And so when I recognize that someone is now, I'm like, okay, like, you know what, the assumptions I made, like I'll give you an example. There was a man who I worked with, and he seemed to have, you know, that sort of rebellion energy, which to me I associate with, like, you know, we're not for the man, we're against the 9 to 5, we're fighting for freedoms. And so he put off that sort of essence. And then he also claimed to be like a girl dad. So, like, he really was really supportive of his daughter. I didn't hear much about his son, though. And so, like, that's also, during that time, it recognized that, you know, a lot of people talk about women who center men. There are men that center women as well. It can be one extreme to the other. Go lay down, you're okay. She likes to do like this begging under her breath, and it drives me nuts, because she'll do it right after I fed her, and she is totally fine. I gave her a big bowl, and she does want to be up here, but I don't need her to be close to me. You're okay. Lay down. And so yeah, and so he was an artist and he's getting paid for his art. And at the time, I was trying to create my YouTube channel, and so I thought maybe we're both creators and we would have something in common. And at the time, I was having issues with a lot of my 9 to 5ers because they were very closed off. And you know, these people were like older than me. They're actually, a lot of them were older than me and still had that high school like mean girl mentality. And I was just like, okay, that must just be the factory world. And then you know, he had offered help when I first entered that workplace. So I didn't realize that at the time, but it kind of made me wonder, like, that anyone that really is meets you at the front door, kind of in a workplace, like a welcome wagon, and they want to be overly helpful. That is just a red flag for me. I know, like, it just is. And or maybe it's an orange flag. We'll call it an orange flag, because there's got to be other things. Like, I like to be helpful in the workplace too, because you understand what it feels like to be the new person. But there's also those people out there that try to collect people. You know, they want to get to them first. They want to really like love bomb them so that they got another number. So it's like a, when I say red flags for things, it's like there, for me, I mean, like, it's something to watch out for when these things are lining up and you're like, okay, like, and then you're just ignoring them. I had to stop ignoring the obvious, and I didn't want to, because I don't like, I've had people make judgments about me, so I was like trying to like really listen to other people and not make sort of assumptions. I've got my heating pad on here, guys. And so you know, I don't like to make assumptions based on people where they are in life, because I feel like I've worked so hard in life, and what my home and my bank account don't reflect the work that I've done in my life. And because I've been financially abused, right? And um, and this abuse affects your confidence levels, so that affects like what you feel like you can go after in life, and like if it's going to work out, and your ability, like it affects your energy levels. So you know, to get back up and out there takes a lot of time to recover from each situation. So all these things are tied into financial abuse as well. and and so I thought he was like maybe one of me, because I'm like, you know what, you're closer to, like, you're making money off your creative passion, and I love that. And he made time for it, but then I realized, you know what, um, when I started recognizing who he was choosing to hang around often, that started to be like, because I could see there was a lady that he was close to, and he worked close to him, but I'm like, well, she's under your supervision, so I understand that. But when I started recognizing like he was quite close with her outside of work, I have my own ways that I observe things. Uh, and I'll do another video about that, maybe just like those aha moments where 1 + 1 = 2, and you end up you're like the 3. And in a way that, you know, when I started recognizing like who he really spent time with intentionally, I was just kind of like, ugh. And even looking back, because there are just little things, like he was really supportive. He was married and he was really supportive of his wife, but then all of a sudden he wasn't. All of a sudden he was trying to like portray her as like, you know, she was really angry and explosive. But I think he was angry and explosive, and I think he was the one who was creating a reactional abuse within her, because when I started speaking up about this coworker that was really close to him, she was targeting me. And she was very possessive over him, and I found that odd, because I'm like, you know, I understand people wanting, these narcissistic individuals, really, the supply is the attention. They want attention from everybody. It doesn't matter who it is. Like, you know, those creepers at work where you're just like, you know, there would be men there at work where it's like I would catch them like looking down my shirt or staring at my body parts, and I'm just like, and those would be the men that she would go over and flirt with. I'm like, are you, like, how do you not see the creepiness of these dudes, right? And she didn't care, because this woman just wanted, it's kind of like, you know, when you have those kids that just want all the toys, that's who she, this is what you're going to recognize. They just want all the attention. And so I could see it in her, but I couldn't necessarily see it in him at first, because he plays that sort of, you know, he plays the part. And then we had message, not often, but like, you know, I was like, okay, you know, like, well, I like the look of his face, but like, he was married, and married is messy. When I was younger, I did deal with a married man. And then, you know, after I separated from the kid's dad at one point, like, I was dating a man who said he was separated. He was not separated. And I was very naive at that time. I just thought, okay, like, he's not married, but he's separated. So like, you just learn as you grow, like, Okay, separated doesn't mean, you know, at that point I learned to recognize, I learned more, like, even with the Todd, the guy I dated on and off for 8 years, like, he was messy. He was attached to all his exes still. He was friends with them. Um, I remember when we broke up, he was already dating somebody else. And then I thought, well, maybe he's grown since then. So after they broke up, because we had remained friends, which was stupid, but you know, I thought, well, maybe he's recognized, you know, because she didn't want him, I guess, after all. And like, it was almost like she love bombed him, she narked him. And so I thought, okay, maybe he's learned his lesson, maybe he's seen my value, and he didn't. And so like, they were both the same. And I just, at that point, I realized, like, people out of breakups are still like high risk, and there's still a lot of unresolved emotions and work to be done there. And so I decided I'm never going to deal with someone who is married, freshly married, separated. You know, like, I need someone who has been on their own, like literally on their own for a long time, doing the inner work. And so I thought, well, like, you know, just because I mean, he's easy on the eyes, but I enjoyed his company, so I'm like, I can just be friends. I can hold that line. I was working on my boundaries. But then it got to the point where it felt like he, it was becoming more than friends, and I just thought this, like, he had also divulged to me, like, he had been out of his home for like a period of time, and that he was going to be moving back in with his wife, and so I didn't know he was actually separated. And then the fact that he decided to go back to her, but it was weird because he was giving me a lot of attention at work, and I thought, like, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And then when I recognized this one coworker of his was very possessive, and I had to say, like, I then told him, I'm like, I don't want to message anymore. uh, and we had I'd made a comment at one point, cashier conversation, you know, and he really seemed to like understand my depth, but he didn't. And there was things that I started to notice, like, he would agree on the things that I say, but he wasn't living them in action. And that's when I started to realize this guy is a player. um, and so not only did I start seeing signs that he was actually involved with that coworker, and that's why she was becoming so possessive. He was very involved with the younger crew, and you know, I enjoy like all ages, but at the same time, like, you can understand at some point, like, you know, it would be weird to want to hang out with teenagers. It would be weird to want to hang out with 20, because they were just on, for the majority, you're just on different, you have different interests and priorities. And so, like, while you can enjoy their company, don't get me wrong, but when you have a grown ass 50-plus-year-old man that is like really making his time to overinvest in like the younger women, because I was told that I look younger for my age, and so I think he thought I was young and naive as well. Because when I show up in an environment, I'm not here like, you know, my fists are out and I'm not aggressive. I'm like there receiving, looking to learn in a new workplace. I'm not like, I'm not a cause for conflict, because like, you're in that environment to receive information. It doesn't make sense, right? And so I think some people mistake that sort of naivety and that quiet observer nature of mine as being weak and conforming to other people's bullshit, and it's just not. So there is something, there was a lot of confusion uh, that connection, and he was putting up a really good facade, and he was charming, and he was fun to be around. Like, you know what I mean? Like, especially when someone gets you when nobody else does, that feels good. And I needed a friendly face. I'd been by myself, hermit mode at home, working on my online business, so I didn't get a lot of attention from anybody really. I just been coming from I had a temporary job I had worked, so I met a man there, and I realized all the men I was meeting was just really low grade, and it's really, for me personally, I just haven't met like in depth. You know, there's people where I'm like, okay, you could be I think you might be a good person, but I don't know them like in depth or personally to know, you know. I understand a lot of people on the surface level, like where they're in front of people. This is where I think of, like, a lot of people will think they know celebrities, or they'll be like, oh, that celebrity seems so nice, and I'm like, well, they're on camera, they know they're being filmed, of course. Like, what do you expect at that time for them to do, right? And so the same goes, these individuals, like, out in public, it's like the tip of the iceberg, not necessarily the depth of the individual. And so, um, when the time came and I was having issues with this coworker because she was also like a team leader, like respite. So like I had to, there were times when she was in charge of me. And so I noticed she was like, I would have one of the seniors be sitting beside me without their safety glasses on. But then when I had my safety glasses off, like on my forehead, just while I'm talking to her, she would feel the need to tell me and boss me around and like, you need to wear your safety glasses. But like, I just saw her talking to one of the seniors, one of her besties, and she didn't tell her to put her glasses on. So like I would find there would be times where she was trying to get me in trouble. I was fasting at a time, and so I didn't want to eat lunch with everybody because one of the senior girls that knew I was fasting decided to order pizza on that day. And she's never ordered pizza before. So it's just like when you look back, you recognize a lot of things that were happening. You don't want to believe it because it sounds odd, but it is odd. And then so I decided to this guy and another guy had the fourth lunch, and I was on the third lunch. So I had asked those two guys, do you mind if I hang out? Like I wasn't talking to them during the lunch. I was just sitting there because I wasn't eating, and I didn't want to smell everyone's food. So I just thought, no big deal, right? And so right away, she did not like that I was taking time out, and she brought the supervisor over, who was a new supervisor, and she was pressuring him. And they came over and addressed the fact that I was taking unscheduled breaks. But like everybody took unscheduled breaks because the molding process they wanted you to keep molding. And so if that meant like the mold timer went off 5 minutes into your lunch, they didn't care. Like just take your break from that time and move on. So the fact that she was trying to tell me now, me only, and hold me only accountable for my breaks, she was trying to dominate me. She was trying to control me and make me feel small. And so she required me then to constantly, like if I'm going to be late for my breaks, I then had to like check in with her. And when I talked to other workers in her area, she's like, we never do that. That is weird. Like we've never had to do that. I don't know why she's doing that. So I had proof that this lady was targeting me. And then, so I spoke to her about it because her and the supervisor came over to talk to me about, I think it was that or something similar. And I got loud and I said, you are targeting me, you are treating me differently, and I want to talk to a supervisor about it. I'm not going to tolerate this because I recognized it. And I didn't get loud, but I did get like, I think it was a fair response. And while I did later apologize for something I didn't do just to smooth things over, and I thought, I need this job, I can't just be my full version. And when I started having issues with her but calling her out on it, like I noticed there was a situation where like when I told him about it, he said he hadn't heard about it. And because I noticed he slowed down his visits during the day, or during the shift, I mean. And I thought it was interesting because when I asked him about it, he said, no, I don't know anything about that. I never heard anything about that. But I'm like, you talk to her, you work with her all the time throughout the day. It's a factory. I know she's a gossip girl. So the chances of him not hearing about it from her and her venting is very odd. So already he's lying again to me. And so that's when I decided, I'm like, you know what? There's something weird going on between the two of them. Whether this is, like I said, this is just someone who I thought would make my day go better while I was trying to build my channel at home. So I'm like, I had to have this job, so I try to make the best out of the situation. But at this point now, there's drama. He's bringing drama. He's causing drama, and it wasn't it wasn't that easy on the eyes. And it wasn't, it was more of a distraction from my day, not necessarily an enjoyment of it. It became that way, right? Because like he wasn't who he said he was, and he didn't have, like, he was slimy after when you actually allow yourself to see somebody, you're just like, ugh. And so, because he claimed to be a girl dad but watched porn all the time, how can you like claim to be a supporter of women, like have a daughter, knowing the industry and who is into that industry, and like it's just a really, how can you support women and watch porn? I just that, to me, that equation doesn't add up, right? So so once I held that line with him and messaged him to say, like, I don't want to do this messaging anymore, and I think we'll go back to cashier conversation where I can be civil, but I don't really want to be developing this relationship anymore in the way, like, I don't want to continue it in the way, like, I can be kind when I'm in passing, but I don't want to, like, because I've been sharing information and my thoughts and, just kind of my belief systems, because he had claimed to be spiritual, right? He knew about auras, he knew about Palo Santo and whatever, like, he knew about some stuff, but he had, like, that's his cover, right? And so he really didn't know about that stuff. And so I realized I just shared too much information with him, and that he had been sharing it with her. And any helpful advice that I thought he could benefit from, because I could see he needed it, I think he was actually just using it as his information, but also trying to like help this lady coworker, because in reality they were actually, you know, I think they had dated before, it didn't work out, and that's why he's going back to his wife as well. And I think that's also like what pushed him towards her, because like when I said no, that he couldn't handle that rejection, and so he went back to her as well. I do feel like that's kind of how it worked out. And so that was a huge, I just didn't expect, because I just didn't expect him to go that dark in a way that like, because I could see her clearly, and I was like, she is a garbage human being, and cruel, and manipulative, and you know, bullying everyone in that environment. And so when he followed her suit, and I didn't expect him to follow me either, but I just thought he came across like he was in charge, and he is not. And so that was part of the confusion. I had to work through that, like, who is he? Because like there are things that I was just like, well, doesn't this mean that? And so that experience in that building for 2 years really helped me realize, like, just because people are friendly to your face, just because they have their own business, I couldn't understand parts of this, because like I said, I was looking for me in them, in the main, that like, I can see your trauma, dude, but like he couldn't see his trauma. He could see my trauma. And so what it is like, that led me to understand that a lot of people sound wiser than they are, because it's easier to see the problems in somebody else instead of seeing it within yourself. So a lot of people sound wiser than they are, and this has then led me to a lot of like those gurus and self-help people out there, and these people that are like have high followings. They have a lot of good questions and information, but some of them are just like vomiting up stuff they've heard from somebody else, but they haven't actually gone through the action and the experience to gain the information themselves. And so that was really helpful. So that's the clarity. I had to get clear on who he actually was, and then I had to grieve what I was hoping to receive in that connection, because at that point I had been through so much trauma with like I had just understood my family was not who they thought they were. They were not supportive. They were using and abusing me. And when you get clear on actually what is happening, like, so there are times in trauma and like a healing from it, you kind of like the tip of the iceberg in this scenario, where like you kind of see things, but you don't see the whole picture quite yet, and all the damage and the real intentions that were happening, because the friendly face is meant to confuse you, right? And so, you know, as I gave myself time to grieve and release the emotions that I was feeling and get vulnerable with what I was actually hoping for, the reality of it, because when the betrayal happens and now you're like, this guy is like when someone teams up with your predator and your abuser and the bully, and you thought they were like somewhat friendly, that is very, that messes with your mind. And now you're kind of like, what the fuck? Like, something just flipped, right? And looking back, I saw the signs. I just didn't recognize them as signs at the time. So like, because I was raised in an environment when I was younger to ignore all those signs, because those are signs of my father, right? And in order to survive, I couldn't see my father as a predator, because I would have like run for the hills, but I couldn't, because I couldn't survive in the hills. So I had to stay in the home. So your body tries to protect you. And this is what, when I heal now, it's like healing my past patterns, and I can see them clearly now. And now, because I'm an adult, now is the time to advocate for that inner child from the past and make decisions and learn what was not taught and what was held from me. And so I had to take, eventually from that workplace, what happened was, it wasn't just him, but like there was a man he was associated with and an engineer I had to work with all the time, and he ended up touching me on my backside. So hugely inappropriate. I had touching from him often, and he just wrote it off as being touchy-feely, until I realized he was actually getting very close to my personal areas, like the side boob areas, and then he finally touched my butt. And so that's when I took my first stress leave, and then I'm like, I gotta go back in because I need money. I didn't know how I was gonna survive, right? And then he started, that engineer guy started circling me again, and it was just a matter of time, not if but when, because he felt entitled to his workspace, and the management did not back me. They believed him. and that guy was very close with him, and he backed him. So it's interesting. He plays like he's this big supporter, and there's dad daughter, and in reality, like, he will be the one who will place his daughter amongst predators because his friends are just like him. And but he doesn't care, because it's like he's looking for status. He's looking for people to pat him on the back and be like, I want to be like you. And so, like, he was amongst lesser people because it made him feel bigger. Like, he would counsel people, and like, he has no good advice to give. Look where you were at, buddy. You don't believe you can make money off your craft, and you're settling. But then I had to realize, so here's what happened is, not only did I get the clarity after the confusion and the releasing of emotions, then I had to go back and, like, what did I miss? What did I ignore? And then how was this man mirroring me? Because I was staying stuck amongst people. Like, I was overqualified for that job. And while I did have issues within the job that I struggled with, you know, in my past, I was very productive as a mail carrier. I would try to get things done quickly so I could get home to take, because I was a single mom. So I was trying to have a time to myself before my kids got home, and it would help me think about supper and, like, really try to care better for my kids. So I'd race through my day and overburden my bag just to get home and save me, you know, so I could get out earlier and get home sooner. And I had another, my ex that I worked with, he would do the same thing, but he would cut off streets and not give people their mail and get home around the same time as I was, but it was just so he could sit at home and smoke dope. It wasn't like, you know, he didn't have good intentions. So there's things where I'd recognize this man had settled because it made him feel big, and you know, amongst smaller people in his mind, right? Like, he always felt like the parent in the room, and he liked that feeling that people looked up to him because he had more, you know, he made more money outside of work, and he seemed to have a lifestyle that people looked up to. But in reality, it's just fake, and it's full of shit, and he's miserable. And I couldn't see it in him directly, but I could see it when I recognized the people that he was around. I'm like, he is like them. He is more like them than he is like me, and he's just playing me. And so the more I recognized that, how people do that, it was helpful for me. But so, like I said, I realized I was settling. And when you realize, like, these people who are running these businesses, I was like, I can run a business. If these people can do it, I can definitely do it. And then I also recognized I had to work twice as hard in that environment, because I had mean girls who were putting my name tags on bad work, like you know, they would train the newbies, and the newbies would fuck up. And we were meant to repair any mistakes we made, but they wouldn't, and they would put my name tag on it and leave it off to the side. So not only would people be like, hey, look what Jen did, and she didn't fix it. So I was getting like two birds, one stone, damaging information, when in reality I hadn't even touched that part, right? And the management didn't check. They didn't care enough. They're lazy managers. And so yeah, there's a lot going on there. And so I had to recognize where I did what I did learn there is I learned to be more resilient, and I also learned to slow myself down. And I took that lesson later, because, like, when you're having to learn new things, and I don't know exactly the details about this, but I was required to learn fast without any sort of, like, actual, like, instruction. Like, in life, I have taught myself everything myself. Even when my dad was living with me a long time ago, he broke the lawnmower that I had been using months. And so, like, the first time he uses it, he breaks it. Even after I told him, like, it's finicky, you gotta, like, I showed him how to use it, and yet he got frustrated and then broke it. And then I had to buy a new lawnmower because he broke the one that he didn't want to learn how to use properly, because he was so aggressive, and he got frustrated easily, right? So, like, that's where I got that. But so if he's impatient with himself, he would have been impatient with me as a child. So it's almost like I had no choice but to, like, and I do believe I faked a lot of stuff till I made it, because, like, learning things in life, like, it's been challenging. Like, you know, I finally got to the point, well, I'll talk to you, like, about that later, but so, like, I had to get to the point where not only I could recognize, like, what I ignored within that person, and these are the painful truths, because when this happens, it feels like it comes out of nowhere, but there were signs. If I'm going to be honest with myself, there were signs. I was looking for something in someone else, and I was ignoring. I was just, I was lonely, and I do get lonely. And so you don't want to believe that everybody out there is an asshole, but like, wow, you know, there's a lot of assholes out there. There's a lot of people who are just inconsiderate, and like, not all of them are assholes. Some are just so self-absorbed with their own life, they don't think about anybody else. But that kind of makes you an asshole. You know, if you're treating, if someone else, if you're inconsiderate of other people's space and how you're affecting them, and you can't self-reflect and be like, I wonder how that's making that person feel. That's a you problem, and people aren't going to want to be around that. And that's why some of these people, like, they think they've won because they have numbers. But I recognized, and because there were times where I felt overwhelmed and helpless and hopeless and scared, because I'm like, it's one against some. But then I realized, and that can be scary, but it was all like mind games, because all these people were cowards, and none of them had done this to my face. You know, they did it in a group. Come meet me outside by yourself and let's have a conversation then. And they wouldn't. They send other people. They hide behind other people. These are cowards. And when I recognized how cowardly they were, this allowed me to start taking back my power, and recognize, like, yeah, I was playing it small. I was playing it small. And not only that, but like I entered that workplace through a temp agency, and I didn't ask questions. And I even, you know, they forced us to work 3 out of 4 Saturdays. So we were working 3 weeks. We were working 6 days a week, and that was like without choice. And I was trying to create my own side hustle. And when I said no to their first Saturday when I started there, they're like, they counted that as an absence. And I'm like, well, this is an unscheduled overtime day. And so I wouldn't have kept my job. And at that time, like, I didn't have enough self-worth to walk away. I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills. And so there, like I said, there were a lot of signs of toxic workplace. There were times when the manager, the product manager, would sit there and talk with one of the seniors. But like, when I saw the seniors work, it's garbage. I'm like, and this lady is standing right beside her, has a chance to look at her work and see how garbage it is, and yet she's not. So this product manager, who's one of the bosses, the head honchos out of the two, was looking to get schmoozed by, you know, this worker would kiss her ass, and then in return she would give this worker more like, not responsibility, but like, you know, rule making. You know, she would, that coworker would report back to her about me, but it wasn't true. You know, it was false information. So she would, so what happened was that senior employee, her name was Charlotte, she was actually watching me on the job and reporting back to, what's her name, Shelly. And so, like, you don't think people are watching you, because that feels very like narcissistic, or like self-important, or like, but they really are. These people really are watching you, and you know it because you get flying monkeys sent by your house. You know it because like, they don't like that you're moving on. You keep it moving. These people are extremely stuck. And so I had to start looking and recognizing who I am and who I'm not, and who they were and who they weren't. And so I also had to look at, why did I feel the need to ignore those red flags? What in me needs more time and attention? And why did I feel like I needed to partner with such toxic people? Because there's something connecting us in some way, right? And it's not this, it can be similar things, but for different reasons. So it's interesting, because a lot of these people have so much people around them, and they have constant attention, like that they're constantly reaching out for attention, have people reaching out for them. You know, they need that validation. They need people like patting them on the back. They need all that stuff. And like, here I'm a hermit, and I don't like all that. I preferred, when I was working there, to work by myself. I didn't want to be, they were loud, they were obnoxious, their laughing was like hyenas, their gossip was like little girls. Like, there was no sort of like creative conversation, or like, let's talk about where we're going. These people were settling in this factory for the rest of their life. That was their game plan. And they were partnered up with people they did not like, but could not leave. And so that's also where the hate came from. A lot of these women at that workplace and in life I've met don't like me because I've chosen to walk independently. It is challenging. It is hard. And it's so interesting. It's like, they haven't done the work, but they're mad that I have. Like, it's really weird when you start to recognize it. And so, I had to look at how I was still tolerating abuse. And so, even though I had cut off like exes, because exes that want to stay friends and continue in situationships and continue and think that we have an equal give and take towards each other is bullshit. And, you know, family members that, you know, I just had so many people in my life that were, I had to really look at, like, what was I giving and what was I receiving? And I've talked about this in a previous video about like them giving me chocolate bars that have been made in a factory with rats, and I'm like giving them a whole homemade roasted chicken with vegetables. Like, it's very different when you really, and that's the thing is like at the time I didn't want to, like, because I had struggled as a single parent and I didn't feel like I was up to my full version, I would allow other people to do the same thing. I'd be like, well, you know what, maybe they're just not grown in that area, maybe they have other, because that guy who was making money as an artist, I was like, well, like, he's excelled in that, maybe I can learn from him and then he could learn from me. So I thought maybe we're just, you know, we have growth in different areas, and that was not the case. There was something I was still really ignoring. And the thing is, when I actually looked at his art, like, while he's good at drawing and his paintings were nice to look at, they lacked depth. And it makes sense now. He lacks depth. He acts like he's some deep, you know, even when I was trying to talk to him at times, he would try to talk about painful things. Like at the time, you know, I wasn't talking to my son, and he's like, oh, that must be really painful. And he wanted to discuss it like at work, on the floor. That's weird. So he's trying to pull some sort of emotional, so he could be that, you know, that savior comforter. But then he also, when I talked to him, he tried to like well his eyes up and try to like forge this sort of like, oh, I'm just so deep into you right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost soulmate eyes. That's what I feel like it was, soulmate eyes. He was like, he's trying to look into the depths of my soul, trying to create some sort of connection. I just remember thinking, that is weird. I mean, you got nice eyes, bro, but like, what are you doing here? It was weird. If you know, you know. And so like in that process, so like after I had to leave, I had so many things going on. The Mean Girls, that sexual harasser, and I had this guy who thought he's holier than thou and some big shit, and he really didn't know anything about life in reality, and just relied a bunch on triangulating women, you know, his daughter, his wife, his partner and coworker, random women, me, you know, 20-something-year-old women. Like, he just triangulated women. That's how he's survived. And he would talk about how he cooked and he did this, and I'm like, I don't think you cook, and I don't think you clean, and I don't think you're, like, he would just like, he would do things like to get attention, and it became obnoxious when you actually, like, at first you thought it was kind of funny, and now he's kind of like a clown. And that's how I realized that's what he does. He tries to make people laugh, and I'm like, well, maybe he's like Robin Williams and he's in pain, but like, that was not what was happening here. He needed it for attention. He always needed to be seen by somebody, and he didn't really care. I mean, he kind of cared, but he didn't. But like, he just lacked depth, and you know, his artwork was not wonderful. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't. Like I said, and that's the confusing part, because you think like some of these people haven't done the work, but they do some work. But yeah, I don't know. That's the thing that was kind of confusing with it as well, right? Like, these things, you're like, well, I just, you know, my dad was a hard worker, and he put a lot of effort into certain things, but you got to realize what they put the effort into. They didn't put it in, like, he didn't raise his kids, so this guy didn't raise his kids, even though he had a son and a daughter. And my dad didn't raise us. So, like, he's getting, you know, he'll get credit for, like, kids that are well behaved, but he didn't actually do the work, and he's taking credit for it. And that's what these people will do. They'll do some work, but they take credit for other work. And yeah, so like, so after I left that environment, I was just like, my nervous system was shot. I was frozen in fear. I then had to figure out, I did have, I was dealing with the HR who was denying anything, was stonewalling me, gaslighting me. Shelly, the product manager, she was doing the same thing. And so I had no one, and these are women. So this is also, you know, when people talk about all men, well, if it can't be all men, because there's women there too. And I don't care who says what about that. And while there are a lot of men with toxic patriarchy belief systems, there are a lot of women out there who don't know how to make their own money and rely on men's money to, you know, spend it on dumb shit and be responsible with it, and like, use men for money too. Because that's part of the dynamic. It's not just men going to work and earning the money. It's the women being reliant on men. And I realized I fell into that too, because I was struggling. I could go and work in a 9-to-5, but I was still codependent. And I also found myself like not being able to walk away when abuse showed up in the room, in the person. And so like, I'm struggling trying to make my own money. And especially when your system has been overworked, and like the fatigue that sets in, because like I've just had to like tolerate this abuse from childhood, at home, in partners, from siblings, and family members, co-workers, community members, just like in life. It gets exhausting. And then I realized, I'll go do a different video about that, but then, so like I had to get clear on, like recognizing, and then like, so practicing the pause, and also asking myself, what in me did I think that I was going to get from them? So like, now that I recognize those traits in the people, I have to recognize those aren't supporters. Those are users and abusers and opportunists. And they're showing up that way because they don't actually plan on giving to me. They plan on taking from me. So like, I see it sooner now. So I don't have to invest emotionally. And actually, I'll include it in this video. When I came up with why, like, I was so emotionally invested in so many people for all the wrong reasons. And I'm like, you know what? I can't care anymore. I care too much. Not only do I still care about other people, I was still moving towards people because I felt bad for them. But these people don't, when you feel bad for them, they don't feel bad for you. These are logical things that I had to start training my brain to like program. These people don't care for you like you care for them. And like, I love to help people, but I want to help people that know how to help themselves. And I was trying to help people that didn't recognize how they were hurting their lives and their own selves. And so they had no intentions of ever be like, if I can't help myself, I can't help you. If my cup is constantly empty, I have nothing left to give to anybody else. And that's what I was recognizing. Like, I just had been raised to give to everybody but me. And so like, while I'm processing all this, I'm realizing belief systems that I've been raised in and the expectations that have been placed on me. I'm realizing the family members that were so easy to discard me instead of communicate and make effort, that they never really, like, they were fine treating me badly. They never intended to change. They don't care that they're hurting me. So like, that's not family, and I had better communication with my kids, with strangers, and understanding and like kindness and common courtesy from some strangers. And I've also had a lot of entitlement, let me tell you. But I had to get myself out of that emotional mess. And so part of that emotional mess, I'll include it in here. It's going to be a long video, but it's important. So I had to purge a lot of emotions, but with that, to prevent the emotions from filling back in, I had to get more logical and understand, as long as I'm giving to people that I feel bad for, they're going to affect my bottom line. They're going to affect my money. They're going to affect my mind, and they're going to affect my energy. And so it's kind of like me or them. I had to start choosing me over them. And remember, I'd been programmed and raised to consider everyone else's feelings but myself, right? So like, now I had to unlearn that and relearn. And so it's just practicing the pause. But I had already practiced the pause when I stopped going back to this ex. And even though he would show up friendly and casual and totally disregard the pain that he caused me, that was a program that I had with my father. He didn't give two shits. He just put me on the shelf, and whenever he needed me, he would take me off the shelf for his own needs, and not like to raise a child and provide for a child. And so you got to understand, like, this is happening. All these betrayals happen for you to kind of if you're a sponge, release, like, squeeze out all that extra water energy, that emotional energy, to dry out the sponge, so then you don't get moldy and stagnant, right? And so like, this is happening for me. And then so when you start to see this lesson as a blessing, you got to get out of that resentment. And that resentment says you're still blaming them. And it does hurt, and you don't deserve that. But at the same time, I realized I was showing up as prey instead of empowered. And so those were signs. While I was still tolerating this bad behavior, while I was still almost like moving without, like, it was almost like, people call it soulmate energy, but it's not. It's like, this is past pattern energy. It's easy to fall in line with these people because it's your past pattern. So I had to create a pause. And then I had to be okay with making something uncomfortable for them. And then I also had to realize it's not my job to over communicate because a lot of these people don't know how to talk. They're not going to talk about things, because when you start talking about things, you bring it to the light. When you start bringing it to the light, that's when their abuse is going to be like, now they have to change. And so these people avoid all sort of accountability, but they avoid any sort of conversation. So this is how I get rid of the narcissist, because when you start holding a mirror up to them and calling them out, it can be a little bit messy, but at the same time, they don't want to come around that, because they don't want to be found. They want to stick to the people who are like them, who are delusional like them and will ignore all their bullshit because the people they're hanging around have bullshit too, and they just kind of stick together, right? And so I had to recognize the less emotional I was. And so like when I found myself to be emotional, I'm like, what am I hurt about here? And I had to recognize, well, I'm lonely. And so I just had to grieve. I'm lonely. I was holding in emotion, but I wasn't tapping into that to express it. So like there were times when, I needed somebody because life was hard, because at those times I was having some really hard lessons of becoming more independent. And I was hoping for support. I was hoping for a friendship along the way, but while I'm in transition, I'm still growing and I'm not at my full level. And not like we're always going to be growing, but I do believe there's a level we need to get to, emotionally independent, mentally clear, where you can, you don't need people to tell you what to believe because you've lived it. So you're like, no, you're trying to tell me I need to do this, but I don't believe that works for my life. And so I had to learn, because I would be up in my head a lot, kind of revising my belief systems at this time. And I still do that. Like I still check. I think that's healthy to be like, is this, what? Maybe I need to revise this a bit. I think that's healthy. I still do that. But I had a lot of just ideas, that belief systems that were not helping me. And the sooner I got clear and more logical, that's where I recognize there's less emotions. Like there's still going to be emotion. I'm a human being. Things don't always work out. But when you start to recognize and be like, okay, this is actually happening for me. I had to experience a number of like trust falls, leaps of faith before I could really realize, okay, like I can handle this. Things are happening for me. It's scary because there are times that I could always kind of talk it out of my mind, like, well, anybody could receive this sort of support, and that's when I also stopped with the excuses for these people, because like the things that I was accessing, a lot of it like other people have access to, and if you don't, then like I had made decisions, hard decisions. I had left Canada Post. A lot of people would never leave Canada Post. I did that, and I did it before my pension got locked in, so that's the money I lived off of. And a lot of people think that's stupid. You have 10 years, or I had 15 years actually. I think I had 15 years in total, I think. Anyways, I was whatever the pension that I had. You after 10 years, you couldn't leave the company and take it as cash, right? And so I made these hard decisions. I made these hard choices. Nobody was, that ex that was around, who enjoyed like cuddle time and eating in my kitchen and eating my food and ignoring my kids. He was not there for me. When I was struggling and I said I need help because I was struggling with my health at the time, he found it more valuable to go out and drink and sleep with other women. And so like, why would I bring that person back? He doesn't know how to hold a house, hold a person. Like he is so messy and immature. And then I had to recognize there's some things about me too that I was in delusion, because like I had the idea that I wanted to partner up with someone because that would make life easier and more fun. But at the time, I had to learn lessons for myself so I could recognize it in other people. And so that's where the inaction helps, because that's the experience of life. And then you can see when I was in that 2-year environment with that workplace, well, I could see people's pain, and I was drawn to it in the way that I wanted to help fix them and help them. It got to the point where I realized, with more experience, that these people, while they're showing up like this, have no intention of healing. There's got to be effort involved. There's got to be some, while I'm on and off with certain ways that I eat and things like that, like I'm always trying. I'm always putting in effort. I'm working on something. Even when I'm resting, I'm still up here revising. And so it's, and that's part of my, as I remove things off my plate, I'm getting better at like spending quiet time in silence. Am I there yet? No, I don't expect myself, because these are coping mechanisms that I've had to develop in order to survive my life. And so I don't expect to just drop them off. And that's where I remove some of the pressure from my mind. It's like, I'm working on a lot, I'm growing a lot. And so the expectation of like, I've quit sugar for the most part. It was like maybe, I would say about a month, maybe 3 weeks ago, I had a cheesecake because I was just craving the carbs and the sugar. But I gotta be careful. It's a reward. And, my body does not react well to it. So these are things that will set back my fitness goals, which then set back my energy goals. and then set back my success goals. So, you know, when you get real with the why and you can start to see clearly, and this is why I can't be friends with certain people. I don't want to be friends with men. The men that want to be friends with me are not looking for friendship. They're looking for support, and they want me to carry them. And I just, it's ick. The ick factor is huge. And you think, well, maybe you're working on something too. And it's just like, it's in a very different degree. Unfortunately, it's not like it's like that's good. That's what you're doing. But like, I have more hustle than you. I have more drive than you. That's not going to work well. I need somebody who is more driven, who is more compatible with me. And so that's where I had to learn about safe people and unsafe people, because I didn't feel good about judging people and like what they're doing in life, because like that's, I don't know their experiences, but I knew that our hustle isn't the same. I knew our drive wasn't the same. But I also knew that they were still messy, and like that splashes on me. And I've done way too much work to have other people affect my life at this time, whether they have good intentions or bad. And yeah, and so when I started doing this, and then I just kept pushing through, there was like that emotionality is like the vulnerability, and what, like I said, what I was looking for from that person. And so when I was looking for something from somebody else outside of myself, that's when I always run into betrayal and issues. And some people and therapists will say, well, if you're overly independent, that's actually a flaw and a trauma response. But but I don't see it as such, because I think you're required to be independent until you're not. And to me, it's kind of like that whole, like, you got to learn how to trust people. And I said, well, first I have to learn if you're trustworthy, and I have to find those signs. Are you trustworthy? So I have to be able to recognize red flags as red flags, and recognize if we're compatible, and then, you know, and then decide, is that worth investing in and spending time with that person? And so then when I become vulnerable, I get real with myself. The painful truth of, I was hoping for kindness, humanity, you know. And while there's some people like in these workplaces where I'm like, I didn't hate them, but I'm like, you're messy, bruh. But I would try to make the best out of it. And so I wasn't going to be mean, but I would be friendly and civil. And like, I could joke to a certain degree, but then I started realizing these people are really fucking ugly on the inside, like really dark and dirty. And I was just like, wow, that's the reality of the situation. And I got a lot of information of that where I now can place it on other people and recognize it. And so then I also had to recognize what I grew up in, because these were blind spots for me, right? Like, if you knew that those people and putting up with that abuse is going to affect your money, you would never, why would you tolerate that? Because you think you have to for some reason, right? That's a lack of self-worth. So not only did I have to, you know, muscle up my self-worth value, but I also had to learn up my boundaries and be okay with walking away, because some people, like, they haven't actually done anything to your face where you can say, you're an asshole, I don't want to be around you anymore. Sometimes they tiptoe around the situation in hopes that you'll make the first move, and that you'll just be okay with, you know, that version of them. And so like moving away from people who haven't actually, like, you know, well, you can see that they lied to you, but you don't have the proof. You know, you can see that they're lying to you about who they are and how they show up and things like that. And so like, I haven't had all the receipts, but I can read a room. And so it got to the point where like I had to just get better at walking away without waiting for the abuse to show up. And yeah, so recognizing, okay, so like, why, I would be like, why am I experiencing this? Why is this so hard? And then I had to realize, okay, so this is what little me had to grow up with. That's sad. That's very sad. So I had to grieve, like, the fact that, and then I realized, like, as a child, this is me now. This is my natural energy and authenticity, is to speak up for people, to advocate, to do better, to grow. And so the fact that I was so stuck in life, that's not a natural position in life. Like, if you put a seed in the dirt, it's going to grow. You can get weeds growing in cement. So things are meant to grow. So if we're in society that is stuck and stagnant, that has come from our uppers, okay? The leaders, the adults in the room, you know? So somebody doesn't want you to grow. That's fucked up, okay? And some people will say, when I hurt people. No. Hurt people, target other people. Because other people who grow, they go in and they go like, what's going on with this? I don't like this version of me. I don't like that I'm hurting my kids. I don't like that I'm hurting other people. I don't like that these people can control me either. So like, we do something about it. These people play the victim, but are the bully. And you can find this in any sort of level of income, any sort of race or color. You can find this in any sort of gender. It's everywhere. And when you start to realize that, and it is high in vulnerable groups, because you get a lot of people that want to help and volunteer, and you think, hey, like, why would a volunteer hurt a person? Why would this person who wants to help and is in social services, why would they want to hurt somebody? Like, that doesn't seem natural, and it isn't, but like, they get a supply from that. And so, like, I have experienced this in many different environments with many different people, and so it's given me a catalog to pull from of how this shows up. And it's interesting, because like if you watch one of my other videos, there was a man who stopped by, and my first go-to wasn't like, you're a predator, you're this, you're that. I was just like, I didn't give a shit, because it's not that deep, you're a stranger. But understanding later, like, it's interesting, like, so that therapist who's like, well, maybe you need to learn to trust people. I actually don't not trust people. My natural state is not to bring my baggage from the past and put it on people. But I am not going to ignore the lessons that I've learned in life, and I'm going to leave the pain and bring the process. And so when I look at people who give me advice like that, that's messy. That's not safe to be around. And these people could be in your community, high status, and yet they're running from a book that has been in a Bible, a system, academic, system, therapies and things like that, where people are like, this works, we do this, but like, no, like, you change your life and then you don't need those things, and even spiritual practices, I feel like a lot of them are like fluff, and maybe you need them to get to from point A to B to C to D, like maybe, but for me, I often wonder, like, I think those are just fillers and distractions, and what if we just got real with the hard truth and just went from A to Z? Like, this is what's happening. This is the truth. Let's express the emotion that way. Let's get good with that. What are you frustrated with? Let's figure it out. And so, getting real cozy with the painful truth of not just me and how I was dumbing myself down, which I saw my mother do, but also, people had encouraged me not to trust my instincts. And so, like, I don't have memories of the past, but I know, like, this is me returning to my natural place. And that means my caregivers, my environment, society has definitely suppressed me and discouraged me and abused me. And so moving forward, I'm going to do another video. I'm going to stop this one here because it's pretty long. I'm going to talk about how I got back up again. So if you're enjoying this sort of content, you relate to it, you feel like you see yourself in this, be sure to like and subscribe and hang in there, because I'm getting better. I'm trying to put this more into a system and format it better. I'm not there yet. It's going to take some time. But I do think, you got a paper and pen, you're going to find some useful information, I think, if you're working through this. And take what you find helpful. Like I said, this is my process. These are my beliefs. They don't have to be yours. They don't have to be anybody else's. But this is what I found to push myself past other people's limitations in their experience. Because what I'm starting to realize too is, like, I used to put all these people on pedestals, and I'm realizing a lot of people have not actually done the work. They've just taken a page out of someone else's book, and they've just been parroting the information without actually using it as experience, like, without putting themselves through the experience. So, and that's not to say, like, some of these people, I'm sure they have a lot of knowledge in other areas and like how the brain works and all these other things. I don't have all the technical terms, but I do have the life experience where I'm doing the work and I'm recognizing what is helping and what is not. So if that's you and you need some assistance, you're in the right place, and I will see you in the next one. There are ways to support me in the description box financially. I could definitely use it, but it's not expected. If you're comfortable and capable, those are options. And if not, definitely would appreciate it. If I'm giving information, it would be nice to get something back in return. A like, a comment, a share, something like that. That's just how the world is meant to work. So I will see you in the next one. Take care.